The New Adventures of the Lone Ranger is an animated television series that ran on the CBS network from the years 1980 to 1982. When the series started in 1980, it was paired with reruns of Tarzan, Lord of the Jungle, and billed as the Tarzan Lone Ranger Adventure Hour. By 1981, Zorro was added to the mix, and the show became the Tarzan Lone Ranger Zorro Adventure Hour. Even though Zorro and the Lone Ranger shared the same programming hour on television, the two heroes never really teamed up with one another. Technically, the meeting of these two great legends in their prime would be impossible, as Zorro was prominently active during the 1820s, while the Lone Ranger was active from the mid-1870s and onward. So you could imagine my surprise when I would learn of the 2012 miniseries from Dynamite Entertainment titled Lone Ranger: The Death of Zorro.
Beware! Beware, I say! Great misfortune will befall all who trespass here!
Unfortunately, if you were expecting two heroic figures to actually meet, as I was, to suggest that you'd be greatly disappointed would be an understatement. Basically, Don Diego de la Vega comes out of retirement one last time to take the mantle of Zorro, and then he's killed in the very first issue. So essentially, the only team-up the Lone Ranger has is with a corpse.
Balls of fire!
Of course, if a span of 50 years or more is too much of a suspension of disbelief for a crossover, your mind will boggle at the 100-year gap between the Lone Ranger and the Brady Bunch. You see, the Lone Ranger and Tonto guest starred on the episode of the Filmation animated series The Brady Kids in the year 1972. In the episode Long Gone Silver, Bobby Brady's Silver Lone Ranger pin switches places with the Lone Ranger's horse Silver thanks to Marlin the Magic Bird. Marlin, I suppose, comes from a long line of Magic Filmation tricksters, such as Batmite and Orko. Thanks to Marlin, the Lone Ranger and Tonto themselves are magically transported to the present day.
This is all very strange, Tonto. Man in house say him see Tonto on television. What television, Kemosabe? I don't know.
Hearing John Irwin do his heroic He-Man style voice as the Lone Ranger is both familiar and comforting, as I grew up with Filmation's He-Man and the Masters of the Universe as a kid. However, when it comes to the new adventures of the Lone Ranger, I really have no nostalgic attachment to the voice acting of William Conrad as the Lone Ranger. Unfortunately, something about his performance, as well as Ivan Naranjo's, who voices Tonto, feels off to me.
Kemosabe, look! A dangerous place to put a camera.
It is, Tonto. That photographer is so struck with the beauty of these black hills, he may not realize he's standing right on the edge.
A much older Dan Reed returns in the new adventures of the Lone Ranger. Filmation seemed to be laying the groundwork for Brett Reed and his newspaper, the Daily Sentinel, with Dan's current occupation as a reporter for the San Francisco Dispatch. Although Dan has graduated from college student to a bona fide professional reporter, he still remains a loyal aide in the Lone Ranger's fight on crime and injustice.
I swear to you, Uncle, your secret will always be safe with me.
I'm sure of it, Dan.
Another nice surprise is a return appearance by Jim Blaine, the Lone Ranger's friend who is responsible for attending to his famous silver mine. One assumes that the Ranger and Tonto make trips down to visit the silver mine and Jim Blaine all the time. However, this is only the second instance we see the character on film since the early episodes of the black and white television series.
Well, I tell you, Lone Ranger, when you're carrying silver bullets as a symbol of peace, trust, and friendship, I figure there just isn't ever enough of that in this world.
The Filmation series is unsurprisingly timid when it comes to violence. The Lone Ranger seldom uses his guns at all. In 27 episodes, the Lone Ranger draws and shoots on a human being a total of 3 times, and all of those take place in the second season of the show. In essence, for the entire first season, the Lone Ranger's twin Colt 45s were ornamental decoration that couldn't even be used to shoot a pistol out of a bad guy's palm. Lone Ranger roadside assistants can use a silver bullet to fix a broken wagon wheel, though. Buffalo Bill and Annie Oakley can shoot down bad guys, but not the Lone Ranger. Oh no! It's ridiculous. The Lone Ranger doesn't even lift a finger to touch his guns. The Lone Ranger faces down this mean hombre who goes by the name the Sharpshooter. One would think this would be a classic showdown between two superb gunfighters. But then the Ranger suggests the Sharpshooter outdo a gun trick he did earlier by shooting a pair of silver dollars. A showdown with silver dollars? Are you kidding me? Who cares about shooting silver dollars? You're out of bullets, asshole!
I don't know if you're a better shot than I am, but I do know you can't shoot without bullets. And you don't have any left.
The first time the Lone Ranger does get around to shooting something, you know what it is? A rattlesnake! If you're a rapist and a murderer, well, don't worry, the Lone Ranger won't bloody your palm, but if you're a rattlesnake, well, watch the fuck out.
Gunfire is dangerous, especially in a crowd.
But they were only blanks.
One should never play with guns.
No matter what your position on firearms is, Tonto is probably the last guy the writers should be using as their mouthpiece for gun control. Seriously, who thought it was a good idea to have Tonto espousing any anti-gun philosophies? Is this really the guy Filmation wants as their anti-gun poster boy?
Turn back, engine! Jam!
I'm not far for Dick. Must shoot now.
Out, you hear me? Square on it. You have only one bullet. We two men. What you do now?
No, you fool! Not me! Tonto, I have been defeated.
Raise your hands. You. What are you doing here? Tell him. Get his gun.
Your gun to kill bad men.
Let's get out of here.
The pussification of two American literary legends continues, as Tonto can only detract thugs from attacking him with his knife by making displays of aggression on a piece of wood from a broken-down wagon. That's showing him Tonto! Even when Filmation gives Tonto his knife, it can only be used to make hollow threats and insinuations. This is totally lame. Knife the goddamn bad guy, not a piece of wood. I'm not even saying Tonto has to kill the guy. Maybe he just knifes him in the knee. Maybe his knee is a fake leg made out of wood, and then everybody is happy.
Is your Indian friend scared?
Tonto, are you scared?
Petrified.
While Filmation snuck in their awkward social commentary on deforestation, oil drilling, or gun control any chance they had, they were also still selling their programming as educational. Instead of what would become the common practice of delivering a moral life lesson at the episode's end, you might be disappointed to find that you would receive a quick informational bit of history from the Lone Ranger or Tonto at the episode's conclusion. Following the precedent set in other animated series such as U.S. of Archie, these post-show sequences would illustrate the historical significance of that particular episode. In addition, the Lone Ranger would meet real-life historical figures such as Buffalo Bill Cody in his showman days as part of the Wild West tours. The Masked Rider of the Plains would face off against real-life outlaws such as the Jesse James Gang, not to mention the undercover journalist Nellie Bly or renowned author Mark Twain.
Mark Twain was a real person.
Jehoshaphat!
If you are an avid Filmation fan who loves history, or simply have a great deal of nostalgia for the show, then I could see wanting to revisit the new adventures of the Lone Ranger. However, I have to say that I preferred the previous animated series from Format Films to these new adventures from Filmation.
This will teach you to ride the lonesome side of the law.
gun to kill bad men.